I know it doesn't look as though we've created very much, but in this particular session we're going to learn how to create our drawings. You might be wondering why we're going to create our drawings at this stage when there isn't enough there. Well, the reality is that you might want to change your design a lot at this stage. So it's a good idea to set up the drawings now so that we've got views of the plans, sections, elevations, site model, perspectives, so that as the concept changes we can easily update the drawings. We'll start by creating a site plan. Let's go to a top plan view and we'll just make sure that we can see everything, so nothing is selected. Fit to objects, now we can see the entire thing. Now we can plan our site plan. I think it could be an advantage to rotate it, so we're going to do our rotate plan. We're going to use that corner, just use the Z or the Z key to zoom in. And so now we have our plan rotated, we can create our viewport. I'll use my rectangle tool, create my rectangle. This is going to become our site plan, and then view on the menu bar, create viewport. So the viewport name is going to be site plan. I usually write viewport or VP at the end of it, so I know there's a difference between a sheet layer called site plan and a viewport called site plan. We need a sheet layer for this. So let's create a new sheet layer, 001, site plan, or you might want to call it concept plan or something along those lines. Okay, so do we want to create a drawing label? Yep, let's call this site plan. What layers do we want to see? Just the site plan layer. What classes do we want to see? Well, at this stage we're not too sure because we haven't created all of our walls, but at the moment let's just show all of the classes. What scale do we want? Well, we think this might fit on the page, but we might have to change that anyway, so let's just leave that at 1 to 250, click OK, and there it is on a piece of paper. Now we haven't set up our piece of paper perhaps, so let's make sure we've got that checked. File on the menu bar, page setup, and we're using an A3 page, which is 11 by 17. Now it might be that for this particular drawing we're showing too much information, or we want to rotate it, or something along those lines. Let's go back to our site model. Let's go back to an unrotated plan, so top plan view, and we want to put in something that's going to help people to understand where north is. North arrow, double click. Here we can choose the configuration that suits us. You might like configuration number 2, you might like number 4, and so on. So just choose a north arrow that makes sense, or one that suits your graphic style. When you go back to your site plan, you should see your north arrow is there. So there it is. There's our site plan. It's got our label, which we can move. Double click on our viewport, we can grab that, move it across, and it might be that this is still too large. So we're going to change this to 1 to 350 or 1 to 500. So there's our site plan, and it just needs to be a small site plan at the moment. We're not putting our site services and so on. You notice that the numbers on my property line are now too large. Let's go back to our site model, let's select our property line, and let's make sure we're using one of the text styles that we've created earlier. Let's look for a text style. What text styles do we have? Let's try our 12 point, double click, and you can see my numbers are now substantially smaller. That should have a nice effect on our plan. I'll just close that. So now what we need is a couple of drawings to show the lower floors, just in concept, and also some perspectives. But we'll also need a title block. So don't forget, get your sheet border tool, double click to place one of those. Let's look for a title block. From our defaults, we might use a custom title block or a standard title block, and later on we'll learn how to edit this. We're going to hide the border, can have a scale factor of 0.7, and I'm going to change the border settings. I want that to be much closer to the border, so just 1 millimeter. And there it is, very close to the edge. We can fill this out later, but the next thing we need to do is to put some plans, probably if we can get 2 plans down here and some perspectives up there. Back to our floor 2. This is floor 2. This is gradually going to become our floor plan. At the moment it says foundation. We're going to change that. We're going to call it living. And if we wanted to, we could start to schedule the areas. We could schedule how much living area we've got and how much bedroom area above have we got. So let's use our rectangle tool, click, and let's make that into a viewport. View in the menu bar, create viewport. So this is our first floor plan. It's drawing number 2, and this is our first floor plan. What layers do we want to see? Just floor number 2. Now I know I've called it the first floor plan. Remember, the floor 1 is our foundations, and at this stage we may not want to have a foundation plan. What classes? Again, it's probably a good idea to turn them all on, and probably a layer scale of something like 1 to 100. So there's our first floor plan there. I'm going to double click on this. I'm going to move where my drawing label is. I want it to line up with that edge there. And then I'm going to drag a copy using my control drag on a Windows machine or the option drag on a Macintosh. When we click on layers, we can change the layer to the upper floor. So we'll have the living areas here and we'll have the bedrooms above. The drawing label needs to change because it's not the first floor, that's the second floor plan. So we've now got our site plan, we've got our first floor plan, we've got our second floor plan, and now we need to put some perspectives up here. Back to our site model layer, and I'm going to use the Renderworks camera tool. Visualization toolset, Renderworks camera, and we're going to click here and click there. Now we need to check the height of this. I'm just going to leave that as it is at the moment, because our contour line is something like 44 meters, but the Z elevation here is nothing like that. What do we do? Well, if we activate the camera, we'll see what we're looking at, which is next to nothing. So let's change that and make that 50 meters, and let's deactivate the camera and then activate it again. Now we're looking at too many layers at the moment. There's a layer that I don't want to see, so right click, layer options, active only. Let's change our view to an OpenGL rendering, view, rendering, OpenGL. Now it appears I can still see my plan behind, so I'm just going to right click, layer options, make sure active only is selected, make sure none of the other layers are visible. Let's just activate our camera again. That's better. So if we render that, we'll see what it looks like. Now maybe we're just a little bit too close. Window on the menu bar, palettes, and visualization. We want to look at our cameras. So right click, let's activate that camera first. So right click, activate camera. So our camera is now selected, and we can fine tune our camera. So we could say, what happens if we change the camera height? Is that going to be any good? What about our look towards height? Or maybe our camera distance. Maybe we're a bit too close and we need to move back a little bit. That'll give us a little bit more context. Do we want to change the focal length a little bit? Make a little bit of a wider angle lens, and then what's that like for a view? And if you're happy about that view, then we can use that camera to create our first perspective. So view on the menu bar, create viewport. Now at this point Vectorworks is going to bring up a dialog box which I've previously closed, and it'll tell you that if you make this camera into a viewport, in order to see the camera again, you're going to have to edit the viewport, and it'll bring the camera back. Because what happens at this point is that the camera becomes embedded into your viewport, and the only way to see it is to edit it. So this is our view number 1. It's going on the same plan as the other information. View 1. What layers do we want to see? Just the site model. We're going to see all the classes. We're going to have some form of custom. This might be too big, so let's make that a little bit different. And I'm going to show you a technique where you can just scale the viewport. So there's our viewport. Let's update it. There it is there. And let's just look at our whole sheet of paper. Let's look at our whole drawing. And let's just put that onto our sheet of paper. So it's a little bit big. Now you can't stretch a viewport, but I'm going to make that viewport into a group. So modify group. Because it's a group, I can stretch it. So I'm just going to stretch that, and as I stretch it, I'm going to hold down the shift key to make sure that I keep the aspect ratio the same so I don't accidentally distort it. Once I've got it to the right size, I need a couple of those, so I'm going to make that about that size. Let's ungroup it. So modify, ungroup. Now I can make a copy of that and drag it across here, and now I've got two viewports which at the moment are showing exactly the same view. Right click, let's edit the camera. This takes us back to our design layer so that we can make changes to it, and I find the easiest way to make the change to start with is to go to our top plan view. What we want to see is what this house looks like when we come around the corner here. We want to be looking at our building. So we're going to look at this particular building here. We want to look at some of the details of it. We want to be a bit lower than that. So let's start off by going AC, terrain, and center surface. So that should send our camera to sit on the surface of our site model. Now it might still be a little bit too high, so normally we have about 6 feet, 1800 millimeters. We're going to look up a little bit, so look up to about 8 feet. Let's activate the camera and see how it looks. If we render it with OpenGL, now there's a shortcut for that, which is Control-Shift-G or Command-Shift-G on a Macintosh. So there it is. Let's fine-tune our camera, because I think we're a little bit close. So if we move back a little bit, might be better. So there's the edge of the house there. Let's change our focal length. Make it 20, so it's a little bit better. Maybe we need to fine tune, maybe we need to step forward just a little bit so we can not see the side of the house there. So that's better. So we'll be able to put a fence around here, we'll be able to put some roading in. So when we're happy about that, click OK, and that's now updated that viewport. Select both viewports, let's update those, and there are our two views. The views would be substantially improved if we put a background in there. So let's put a sky, mostly sunny. Update those again. That's better. We've got our camera, we've got our shadows, we've got our sky. What else can we do to improve it? Well, let's have a look at our render settings. Very high, high. So there isn't much more we can do for that. As we progress our project, we'll be able to update these drawings and see the concept. So if you wanted to show your client now, you could certainly show the client now some of the information you've created already.